to do it on Wednesday evening. Wednesday evening, but not Thursday evening, because Thursday evening is on my thing, MSc at UTech. So can't do it Thursday evening. All right, so let me just see if I can share my screen in the meantime too. And see if I can bring in I have to turn on this one. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Bring out the classroom because I have some videos in the classroom that I want to discuss.
Ouais. Ah ouais. Ah, c'est novembre.
Mm-hmm. All right, so project management. Classroom. Material.
So, I stopped my own recently. This last year.
So we have arrow on node, and we have the arrow diagram.
Oh my God.
Arrow on node and arrow on activity. So
Yeah,
both of them we have.
This them where them from.
Yeah, these are for the project management network. They call them project network diagrams. So we look at this one last week, and we look at this one as well. So we are gonna look at some more today. So let me see now. This one. Let me see if this is the right one. Because I'll set them up in sequence.
Welcome to this
Yes. So this is one of them.
video.
This is part one. So as we go through, we're gonna just go through and discuss.
Series on network diagrams and the critical path method for project management. The sources for this video series are Pearson Project Management in Practice and Kloppenborg Contemporary Project Management. There are three parts to this series. So first of all, we'll look at project network diagrams, how to produce one, the critical path method, an overview of that, and a practice activity. That's part one, this video. In the next part, we'll look a little bit more deeply into critical path analysis and how to do the forward and backward pass to determine early start, early finish timeframes and late start, late finish timeframes. And then in part three, we'll look at the different types of relationships in a network diagram between activities and ways to decrease the critical path or the project timeframe, as well as some tips on estimating activity durations.
Right? So it's basically three diagrams or three networks. So I'll be looking at three videos. One type of network, but three different videos. So we're gonna look at three different videos. The three different videos will explain various parts of a network diagram. And anything that all that you don't understand, I'll explain. So from time to time, as we go along, we're gonna stop the video and I will explain. But I think might be hard for you to understand, and then we can move on.
First, what is a network diagram? It's a schematic display of project activities and dependencies between project tasks. These diagrams are also known as a PERT chart, or Program Evaluation and Review Technique.
And that's what PERT stands for. Program Evaluation and Review Technique.
And they're automatically produced in Microsoft Project. This enables detailed analysis and decision making. And there are two methods. One is activity on arrow, and the second is activity on node. In this video series, we're going to concentrate on activity on node.
And this is the one that we were looking at last week. The whole time last week, we were looking at activity on node. We didn't look at activity on arrow, but we're going to look at activity on arrow. Possible, if we have enough time today, we can look at activity on arrow. But we want to look more in depth on activity on node. All right. Let me just to say something about this right up here. So automatically producing MS Project. Microsoft has an application that you can use to set up your AON chart. So we call this a AON, right? So we have AON chart and we have AOA chart, right? So Microsoft Project, the project application help you to set up, can help you to set up both AOA and AON. So we're gonna look more in depth on the AON.
Node means box. Here is an example. So the activity is on the node, which is the box here. The identifier is A and its application and approval. So this network diagram shows us the different activities that need to be done and how they relate to each other. We have a number of different paths. So for example, A, B, E, and then H is one path because we have arrows going through those different activities. Here's another example. This is similar to what would be outputted in arrows going.
This is one part right here. A, B, E, and H. Can anybody tell me any other part? Starting from A, C,
D, E, F, and M. Every part I know,
no, name it. Just like we have A, B. See the arrow going from A to B to E to H. That is one part.
Yeah.
Where's another part? A, C.
E, F, G.
No, start from A,
S, C, F.
E, and H. I have
Yeah.
also A, C,
C,
F,
F,
and G.
G. Yeah.
You have A, D, F,
F.
and G.
Yeah.
You also have A, B, F, G, and H. You see that?
Going through those different activities. Here's another example. This is similar to what would be outputted in Microsoft Project or a similar software. So the activity names are at the top. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and J. There is a little bit more detail in these nodes boxes. They're giving us the start and finish dates, an ID number, and the duration, which is 1 day for this particular activity. If we wanted to, we might also list the resources required for this specific activity. So going through this network diagram, again, there are a number of different paths. This time we'll have a look at what they are. So the first is A, D, H, and J. The next is B, E, H, and J. Then B down to F and then J, and along the bottom C, G, I, and J. These are called the different paths through the network diagram.
And let me just pause that bit. So this is how it would look when I use Microsoft project. All right, when they do it in Microsoft on the computer, Microsoft Word, Microsoft project, this is how it would look.
And we can add up how long each path will take. For example, A, D, H, and J is 1 day plus 4 days plus 6 days plus 3 days. So 1 plus 4 is 5, plus 6 is 11, plus 3 is 14 days to do A, D, H, and J. So there are some rules for developing project networks. First of all, the network flow is from left to right. In the image here, we can see all of the arrows flow from left to right. An activity cannot begin until all preceding activities have been completed. So let's take F here, the commission approval. We can't actually start F until B, C, and D are all complete because these arrows all go into F. But on top of that, A also needs to be complete because it's a predecessor to B, C, and D. So in order to complete F, A, B, C, D all have to be completed. The arrows on the networks indicate
What are the two predecessors of H?
E and J.
All right, very good.
D all have to be completed. The arrows on the networks indicate precedence and flow, and arrows can cross over each other. So this is telling us the order that things need to be done in, but some things, as we see here, can also cross over. Each activity should have a unique identification number. This prevents the project team and other stakeholders from becoming confused. So each task has its own individual identification number. An activity identification number must be larger than that of any activities that precede it, and looping is not allowed. So we can't have two things, for example, B and E, that
So remember now, looping, you can do looping in flowchart in the programming. But you're not doing this type of network diagram for project. You can't have everything coming from H going back to E. You can't have an arrow going from H to E back, and you can't have anything going from B to A. And you can't have anything going from F back to C or F going back to D. So it is only from left to right. So all the arrows must be going from left to right, traveling from F going toward the right.
go around and around and around because we would never get to the end of our project. Now an introduction to the critical path.
All right, let me ask a question. Suppose you have an arrow going from H to E. What happened to the project?
From H to E, it can't go back that way, sir. So
All right, then suppose to go back. What should happen? What happened to the project?
you can start something.
No, sir, it will never finish. Can't
Uh,
continue going like
loop.
this. Loop.
No, loop.
Right. So you try to avoid that.
Get to the end of our project. Now an introduction to the critical path method. This is a project network analysis technique used to predict the total project duration, so it tells us the project timeline. A critical path for a project is the series of activities that determines the earliest time by which the project can be completed. And there's a little example down here. The critical path is often shown in red, and for us here it's A, D, H, I, K, and L. That's the critical path. The critical path is the longest time through the network diagram and has the least amount of slack or float or what you might consider spare time. And it's automatically.
Make certain that you are reading up all of these. These are your notes, and these are what you have to study. And these will be coming on the exam. So the critical path is the longest path to the network, right? And the critical path for the project is a series of activities that determine the earliest time by which the project can be completed. In other words, that's the only that's the part that you'll be focusing on mostly when you're doing a project. You won't focus on the other part them. You will focus on the critical part, which is the longest part to the network. In other words, it has the most days or the most time. The most time. Time can be in days, it can be in hours, it can be in minutes, it can be in seconds, it can be in a month, it can be in years. Right? But it's the longest time. And that's the critical part. If we try to do it before the critical part, if we try to finish the project before the critical part, which we will look at in when we are doing the period system, the period method, then you're gonna see that uh you're gonna have a lot of time leave. You're gonna have a lot of project incomplete part of the project, right? You're gonna have a lot of incomplete part of the project if you try to finish it before the critical part.
Calculated in software such as Microsoft Project, as indicated on this slide here. It's usually in red. To do this, first you need to develop a good project network diagram. Then you add the durations for all activities on each path through the project network diagram. Then calculating those durations for each path, you can figure out the longest path, which is the critical path. Let's do an example. We have 4 questions here. How many paths are on
Sorry. All right. Sorry about that. My mic was off. All right. Before she even finish right here, I want to find out how many routes or path we have to finish this project. How many routes we can take? How many routes can be taken?
I would say 2 routes, sir. 2 routes.
Routes. 2 routes. All right. So it is A, B, C, and E, or A, B, D, and F. Which one is the longest part?
The longest part would have been D.
No, no, don't only say D. You have to use everything else with D. What else
Or
you
D.
do? So start from here, so.
Or A, B, D, F.
All right. How do you know that?
At the time period where in them.
All right. So the time period for this is how much?
For A, in total 7
Yes.
and 9, that are 16.
All right. And how much is this one?
And 7 and 3, 10.
All right. So the critical part is which one? The longest part of the critical part is the longest part. Which one is the critical part? This one.
A, B to F.
All right. Or A, B, D, and F. This is the critical part. All right. So right away you'd have answered 2 questions right there, so Sheldon. All right.
Yeah.
How long is each part? You do that already, the while. So you answer 3 parts already. All right. What is the shortest amount of time needed to complete the project?
10 day, 10 day.
Oh, that's it. That's the trick. A lot of people get catch with that. The shortest amount of time need to complete the project is what? Is the critical part, don't it?
Yeah.
Exactly. So the shortest amount of time is the critical part, which is the 16. All right.
Yeah.
on this project network diagram? How long is each path? What is the critical path? And what's the shortest amount of time needed to complete this project? Let's figure it out. First of all, how many paths? Well, first we have A, B, C, and E. There's 1 path. Then we have A, B, D, and F. There's 2 paths. Now for how long is each path? So A, B, C, and E. is 2, plus 5 is
Sorry.
7, plus 2 is 9, plus 1 more is 10. Let's presume this is weeks, 10 weeks. The second path is A, B, D, and F. Let's add those up. So 2 plus 5 is 7, plus another 7 is 14, plus 2 more is 16. Let's call it 16 weeks. So now we know how long each path is. So which one is the critical path? So we need to remember that the critical path is the longest one. So that's 16 weeks. So I can indicate that my critical path is A, B, D, and F. What is the shortest amount of time needed to complete this project though? Well, hopefully you figured out that that's also 16 weeks. If we tried to do it in 10 weeks, then a whole bunch of activities in here would not get completed. So the shortest amount of time is in fact 16 weeks, which is also the critical path. Now here's an activity for you. We have a series of activities. We know their description, the required predecessor, and the duration. Your job will be to draw a project network diagram using the activity on node technique, remembering node equals box. Identify the 4 paths and the duration of each path, and identify the critical path. But here I'll get you started. So activity A is product design. There's no predecessor and it takes 5 months. So I can safely put activity A here, and down the bottom I'm just going to show that it takes 5 months. The next one is market research, no predecessor, and it's going to take 1 month. So with no predecessor, I could technically start that at the same time as A. Next we have C, production analysis. It needs to follow A. So A is the predecessor. So I'm going to draw an arrow. Here's C, and it goes for 2 months. So I've got you started. See if you can finish that, and then we'll go through the answer. You might want to pause the video. You might want to pause.
All right, Sheila, last team, can you do this one?
Yeah, it's simple, man.
All right, so sketch it out, and then I'm gonna give you the privilege to share. And you share and show what you have.
Share.
Mhm.
Can take a picture and upload it.
We're gonna do it. You're gonna join it first and take a picture and upload it. Steven?
Yeah, yeah. There, man.
All right. I'm gonna do some go straight to it. You see this right here?
Yes, sir. Just like that, man.
All right. So what's the critical part?
Critical part would be
Out of all of these?
yeah. ACFJ. No, SDGH.
No,
Sure.
ADGJ.
Okay.
DJ.
Yeah, man, she's
G-
right here, so. Yeah, man.
G-
But I have it, but Sheldon going too fast and miss out this.
No,
They call
H
it
and J.
H. J. It's J. You call it H instead.
Yeah,
Oh,
J.
you know, might be
So
wrong in
this one,
glasses.
probably. So it is ADGJ. That is ADGJ. So this is the critical part. This is the longest part.
Mm-hmm.
Path. Well, hopefully you figured that out. It's 13 months. It's the longest path. So ADGJ at 13 months is the longest path. It's also the critical path, and you can't complete this project in less than 13 months. The only way you may manage to do that is if you can compress something, an activity that fits on this critical path.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could do G, for example, in 3 months, then that would make a difference to the overall project time frame.
Mm-hmm.
If you compressed something here on F, let's say you ended up doing F in 1 month, it would make no difference to the length of time the project takes because it's not on the critical path.
All right, you understand that? If you change, if you do this even in 1 month, even half a month, even couple hours, if you do this in couple hours, if in couple hours, it's still not gonna affect the critical part. The only way to affect the critical part is if you change something on the critical part itself. You understand that, people?
Yeah.
So you'll get a question like that, You'll get a question like that. They'll ask you that suppose C take couple hours and F take couple minutes. What will be the critical part? And they're gonna say they're gonna change your mind. All right? And they're gonna ask you if it will it affect the critical part? No, to affect it. Same thing we done here, so. Only if you change something on the critical part, it will affect the critical part.
However, if you manage to reduce the time frame of F and put those resources onto G, that might help reduce the time frame of G, which would make a difference to the critical path.
Mm-hmm.
So critical path method helps us to understand our time frame and give us some ideas for compressing our project time frame.
So what they are saying, if you reduce this by say 1 day and put the 2 day, in other words, if you reduce this let's say if it's 1 day now, you take about 2 day, and if it's 1 day, then you have to put my 2 day right here, so. You understand? And you start to reduce the time.
In part 2, the next video, you'll learn more about critical path analysis, and I'll show you how to do the forward pass and the backward pass through the network diagram.
All right, and we do this last week already, but we're gonna do it again. But I'm gonna allow she to do the talking, and then I will explain. That's number 1. This is number 2.
5 days and finish it. Welcome to part 2 of the video series on network diagrams and the critical path. In this video, we'll be covering critical path analysis, and we'll look at the forward pass, early start and early finish, and the backward pass, late start and late finish. Completing the forward and backward pass helps to answer some questions. The forward pass helps us to know how soon can an activity start and how soon can an activity finish, and also how soon can the project as a whole finish. The backward pass helps us to know how late an activity can start and how late it can finish, as well as what activities represent the critical path. And lastly, how long can each activity be delayed?
All right. So two type of questions. This one right here, sir, would come from the forward pass. So this question, if they ask these questions, how soon can an activity start? This can be done on the forward pass. Or soon can an activity be finished? It can come from the forward path because you have early start and early finish. Or soon can a project finish? You can get it when you go straight through the whole entire forward path until the end. The end part will tell you how soon the project will finish. And that again is the forward path. For the backward path, now you can see questions like this on the exam. How late can an activity start? Right? And that speak to the late start and the late finish. All right. Oh, this is not supposed to be late state. This is supposed to be late start. And they make a mistake in the video. This is supposed to be late start. Not they have late state right here. Is it? All right. How late can an activity finish? Right. So it can show the late finish. Right. Which activity represent the critical path? So it can tell you which activity represent the critical path, and it's only when you finish and you do the backward path, we are mainly find the zero slack time and the zero float time going straight back. That's the critical part, right? How long can each activity be delayed? You can tell you how much time it can, how much slack time, how much time you have to spare, how much spare time you have. You can have some spare time as well.
So let's have a look at how to do this. First of all, we sequence the activities. So here we have 3 columns. The first column gives the activity and identifier A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. There's then a brief description of each activity, and in the last column, it tells us what the preceding activities are. So it's telling us that activity A has no preceding activity. Technically, it could start on day 1. Activity B, C, and D are related to activity A, and activity A are their predecessor. So let's have a look at what this sequence actually looks like. And here it is here. So we saw activity A, and we noted that B, C, and D are all dependent on activity A, or activity A is a predecessor to B, C, and D. Going back, we can see that E is dependent on B and C, and F is dependent on B, C, and D, as these are the preceding activities. Let's have a look at those. So here's E, and it's dependent on B, there's the arrow, and it's also dependent on C, there's the arrow going up from C to E. Down here, F is dependent on B, there's one arrow, C, and D. So B, C, and D are all predecessor activities for F. Let's go back up. G is dependent on F, and H, which is final occupancy, is dependent on E and G, as those are the preceding activities. So here's G being dependent on F, and here's H, final occupancy, dependent on E, there's the arrow, and G as well. So now we've sequenced the activities. Next, we want to add some durations. So there's a legend or key down the bottom here indicating what the different things on this network diagram mean. And we're concerned with duration at the moment, which is shown down the bottom. So through good estimation methods, we've determined the different durations or time required for each of the different activities. So this will be 5 days, 15 days, 10 days, 5 days, 10 days, 15 days, over here 170 days while construction is completed, and finally 35 days for occupancy. Now we're ready. E, there's the arrow, and G as well. So now determine the different durations or time.
All right, let me just explain something right here now. Down here is known as a legend or a key to explaining all the nodes. So remember that node that the nodes are the box thing, the box that look like box. So this is a box, so this is a node. They have activity and arrow, but this is not activity and arrow. This is activity and nodes, or activity and box. So when you see the box, it's a node. So it is AON, activity unknown, or node, NODE, or activity and box. Let me explain all of these things, that's going on right here for these various parts. So this is early start, early finish. This is the identification, and usually they usually use letters, right? So the activities letters, they use them, or sometimes they can use number for the activity ID, right? But in most cases they use A, especially when they're doing the AOAN, they use letters for the activity IDs. So these A, B, E, C, F, these are the ID, right? Tell you the activity that's going on. This is Slack time. This is Slack, and this tell you the description, what activity is taking place right here, right? It tell you how long the activity will take to complete. This is a late start. This is a late finish. So that's all of these boxes are saying. So we're gonna attempt to see if we can fill them out.
Time required for each of the different activities. So this will be 5 days, 15 days, 10 days, 5 days, 10 days, 15 days, over here 170 days while construction is completed, and finally 35 days for occupancy. Now we're ready to carry out the forward pass, and this is going to tell us our early start and early finish. On our legend, these are shown at the top here, either side of the identification. So first we have activity A. It's telling us that the early start day is 0. It's going to take 5 days. So 0 plus 5 is 5, which means that the earliest we could finish this is on number 5, day 5.
All right, let me say something now. So the early finish of the preceding activity is the early start of the activity that will be coming after. Let me say it a different way. The early start of the activity or of each activity is equal to the early finish. It's equal to the early finish of the predecessor. So the early start of each activity is equal to the early finish of the predecessor. So this is the predecessor. So the predecessor would carry over to B, C, and D. So the early finish for the predecessor is 5. So 5 would carry over to B, it would carry over to C, carry over to D. All right. If you look at this one right here, the predecessor for E is B. The predecessor also for E is also 15. The predecessor for F is B. The predecessor for F again is C, and the predecessor for F again is D. So let us look at this too. We look at the predecessor for E, and we have two numbers. We have 20 and we have 15. What they usually do is carry over the highest early finish to the activity. So this is 20 right here, and this is 15. We couldn't carry over 15 over here. We have to carry 20 because 20 is the highest one. Same to this right here. This is 20 right here. This is 15 and this is 10. We couldn't carry 10. 10 is the smallest. We couldn't carry 15. 15 is smaller than 20, so we have to carry over 20. Everybody understand that? Hello? Hello, hello,
Yes, sir.
hello?
Yes, sir. We are over.
All right. Okay, okay. All right. So let me see now. With this one now, this will carry off to this because this is 30, because this is just one of them, 30 alone. What about this? You have 35 and 200. Which one is supposed to carry over? The 200, because 200 is higher than 35. You see? Two of them. H, the predecessor for H is both E and G. So we carry over the highest one, which is 200. Couldn't carry over 35. If you carry over 35, then you're going to have a lot of days leave in the 200. Right? And the project would not complete on time.
Now B, C and D are all related to A. A is a predecessor to those three, so we need to take 5 all the way through to these 3 activities. So it's telling us the earliest day we can start these activities is on day 5 because A has to be completed. Up the top, 5 plus 15 is 20 for B, 5 plus 10 is 15 for C, and 5 plus 5 is 10 for D. So,
all right, everybody understand so far? Let us start over again. We know that we don't have any predecessor for A, and we're just starting the project. We know that the duration for the project is 5 days. For activity A is 5 days, and the initial early start is 0 day. So 0 plus 5 will give you 5. So we carry over 5 for each of them, because this is what is known as a burst. This is a burst right here. It bursts in other words, it's going all over the place. It's going to B, it's going to A, going to B, A, going to C, and A, going to D. But the only early finish that we have is 5. So 5 will go over to the early start of B, C, and D. 5 plus 15, because the duration for B is 15, the duration for C is 10, and the duration for D is 5. So 5 plus 15 is 20. 5 plus 10, 15. 5 plus 5, 10. So we need to decide which one of them will go over to both E and F. Remember now we're looking for the highest one to go over. So we know that for B, we have 15 and 20 go to B to E, coming from both B and C. But they found what is known as a merger right here. Just like here's a merger also, and here so is also a merger. But this merger right here, so the highest one in the merger is 20, so you have to carry over 20. Same with this right here, you have 20, 15, and 10 for this merger, but the highest merger is there's the value in the merger is 20, so you have to carry over 20. Right? Then you can add again now. So 20 plus 10 is 30. All right? So you carry over the 30. 20 plus 15 is 35. Right? But 30 plus 170, because the duration for G is 170. 30 plus 170 is 200. You have 200 and you have 35. Again, you have a merger right here. 235, you have to carry over 200.
it's giving us these different time frames for our earliest finish days on these activities. Now, as we go forward, we need to take across the largest number. So if we have a look here at E, there's a choice between 20 or 15. And for F, we have a choice of 20, 15, or 10. We have to take the largest number because everything has not been completed yet in terms of taking across a smaller number. So if we take across 20, we can be sure that all these different activities have been done. And here it is 20. So on E, 20 plus 15 is 35, and on F, 20 plus 10 is 30. For G, we're going to take that 30 across here, add it to 170, and that's going to give us 200 days for this piece of work. Here we have to take across the largest number. If we don't, not all of the required work will be completed. So 200 plus 35 equals 235, and this is indicating that 235 days is the fastest time frame that we can get this project done in. That's our
Right, and it cannot be done any earlier than that. Right, and usually when you have a project go more than the time, it's called an overrun, and the project manager have to pay back all those money that would be to finish the project if it go over time, right? Especially if they didn't calculate it properly, and they make a lot of the activities have a lot of overrun, and they slack off in a lot of time. They end up with a lot of float time and slack time, right? So the project will finish in 225. This is what days or month? Was it month they're working with or days? Depends on what they're working with. It can be also year, can be also month, time. Time can be hours, a minute, and the project doesn't have to be a construction project. It can be just a simple project to set up a system, to set up like an entertainment center. Like for instance, you're gonna have a concert, you can set up a project. You can set up a project to have the whole entire thing finished how it's supposed to be done, right? Everything is still set up. All the musicians set up, everybody set up, everything set up, the lightning system set up, everything set up with the way it's supposed to set up, all right? Sequence and everything, program and everything set up. That can be a project. Project doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a construction site, right? You making a software, that's a project as well. You understand? You set up a business venture, that's a project, right? So what would happen right here now? You'd have to carry down the early finish for the last activity. You have to carry it down to the late finish when you're doing the backward pass. Right? And the backward pass now, we're gonna calculate the backward path to see where you go back with that now.
Project time frame. Now let's look at the backward pass. In our legend, these are shown down the bottom next to the duration. In the backward pass, we're working backwards through the network diagram. So previously, we've established that 235 days is the quickest we can get the project done in, and that's actually our project time frame. So it's also the last day or the latest finish date that we want in our project. So we take 35 away, and that's going to leave us 200. We're going to take this.
All right, so you can write down the equation for that now. So it is LF, which is the latest finish, minus the duration, and that give you the late start. So it is the late finish minus the duration, give you the late start. So it is LF minus DOR, give you LS.
200 backwards.
And this 200 right here will go backward. It will go backward for both E and G. Because the only late start that we have is on the final activity. So we have to use the late start for the final activity and let it be the late finish for the preceding activity, which is both E and G.
And it will appear in both E and G here. Working with E, 200 minus 15 gives us 185, and for G, 200 minus 170 gives us 30. Here we're going to take that 30 backwards, minus 10 equals 20. Now we have a choice here of which ones to take backwards, and we always take.
We should always take back. Smallest and the biggest one when you're going back. You take the highest one when you're coming forward and take the smallest one when you're going back.
Backwards the lowest number. So although we have 185 here, 20 here, which goes to all three, is the one we're going to take back.
Everybody understand that? You can't take back 185 for the late start. You'd have to look for the lowest one, right? Look at this. This is a merger right here between E of a merger of B and C. Right? It's a merger of B and C. This is 185. And F right here so is 20. So 20 have to go up here. You can't care about 185, you have to care about 20. Also for this one right here, this is 20 as well. Because this right here is a merger. And this also is 20. So you care back 20 here, you care back 20 here, I care back 20 here.
So 20 minus 15 is 5 for B, 20 minus 10 is 10 for C, and 20 minus 5 is 15 for D. Once again, we take back the lowest number. In this instance, it's going to be 5. 5 take 5 is 0. So
and that makes sense, don't it? Because you start off with 0. Start off with 0. So the earliest start time is 0. So the latest start time for the first activity must be 0.
Now done the backward pass. Having done this, it becomes easier to calculate the slack or float. Let's have a look at that. So the slack or float on our legend or our key is at the side here. And if we look here, our slack or float on A is 0. That means we have no time up our sleeves. We have to start it immediately and we have to do our 5 days and finish it. So you can see here all of these numbers are the same. So what we come to realize is that the critical path has 0 slack or float. So anything that has a 0 is going to indicate to you that it's on the critical path. Let's investigate further. So construction plans also has 0. That
All right. How do you get these zeros? Anybody have any idea? Or you calculate the slack time? It is the late finish minus the early finish. 5 minus 5 is 0. 20 minus 20 is 0. 20 minus 15 is 5. 20 minus 10 is 10. 30 minus 30 is 0. 200 minus 35, 165. 200 minus 200 is 0. 35 minus 35 is 0. So see, anywhere at all where you see the 0, that's where we are looking for to get what is known as the critical part. And the critical part is the longest part through which the program the project are supposed to finish. Right? The longest part. And usually they use a thick line to indicate that. So if you look for all the zeros, we would get A, B, F, G, and H. And they also put it with a diagram right here with a dash arrow. A dashed arrow is A, B, F, G, and H. So that's the critical part. Most of the time, if you have to color it, if you don't want to draw it thick, and you have a pen, a color pen, you color it in red. In Microsoft Project, it automatically will come out in red by itself.
must be on the critical path. Next, the commission approval has 0. It's on the critical path. It leads to waiting for that construction. No slack or float again, no time up our sleeve. It's on the critical path. And lastly, so is occupancy.
All right. So let me just explain further what is the slack and the float. With the slack and the float, you have 0 time to waste. You understand? You know, in other words, you have 0 time to waste. You can't waste any time right here, so. But you have a lot of time right here, so. In C, 5 days. In D right here, so you have 10. Right here, so you have 165. But at the critical part, you don't have any time to waste. You don't have no time to waste.
So through doing this process, A, B, F, G, and H can be seen as our critical path. Now what this means is a slack or float is the time you have up your sleeve on each task or activity to complete it and still keep the project on track. So this is telling us that we have quite a little bit of decision making and quite a few options as to when we start this staff report. As long as we start it before day 185, we're safe and we won't impact the total time frame. The same here, we have a slack or a float of 5 days up our sleeves, so we can decide when in those 5 days we start the traffic study, as long as we start it no later than day 10. If we're after day 10, let's say day 11, that's going to push everything out. Okay? And then down here, again, we have some slack or float of 10 for the service desk. The latest day we can start this without affecting the timeline is day 15. If any of these things with 0 float go over time, our whole project is going to go over time. So imagine if we get to commission approval, it takes an extra 5 days. That's going to push the whole project out by 5 days. So now for an activity. This will be over to you. So based on the following information in the table, draw a project network diagram using the activity on node technique. Identify the paths and the duration of each path. identify the critical path, and determine the early start, early finish, and late start, late finish for each activity.
All right, let me just stop it right there. Ask a question. Can everybody manage this? If they get this to do and you get certain questions, and they say draw a project network diagram using the activity and node technique. Identify the path and the duration of each path using this activity box down here. Identify the path and the duration of each path. Identify the critical path. Determine the early start, early finish, and the late start, late finish date for each activity. Can you all do this if you get this to do on the exam? I can do it if I get it to do it for an assignment.
Yes, sir. We can do that, yes.
You can do that. All right.
Mm.
So I'm gonna give you one to do like this, but let me just work a bit further first.
So let's get you started. First, you'll want to use a grid. So just like in the previous. So now we've ticked off the first part of the plus C make or G path. 47 means that is also on the critical resources. This network diagram is showing the start and the review leading to all.
Shout, you mute your mic.
Oh, sorry about that. Sorry about that. So this you'll find this on Microsoft Office project, right? So you have Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint. You also have one of them that is known as Microsoft Project. You can set up this in Microsoft Project. When you start the project, it will tell you where to put the activities. Once you put in the activities, the predecessors and the duration, then the diagram will draw for you. It will draw something like this for you. Right? So let me see if I still have it on my computer. I always have it on my computer. Let me just see if I have it. Hold on. Just a minute, take a bit. Let me see if I have it. Let me see if I think this is it right here. Yes, CJ Microsoft Office project. Yes, so I still have it still. So I have it in my taskbar. Let me see if it's up here. Here it is right here, so Microsoft Office project. I'm gonna open it and show you how it looks.
Parts produced.
I'm gonna just open it and show you how it looks. Alright, so here's it right here, and you can put in a task name, like yes, so it gives some time, and you can put in a predecessor. Uh, and usually I put the activities over here. Call this activity. Sometimes it doesn't use letters, it uses numbers. I try putting numbers in the sometime and the number doesn't fit in it. So this is the activity right here. So I'd call this activity 1 right here, and the predecessor for this would be 0. Right? I would be it would have any predecessor. Call this one right, and I can put how much duration I have this. 2 days, right? And if you look right out here, it's like something like a Gantt chart creating. So we go to view and I go to network diagram. Then I say network diagram start to come out like this. So as I did look while, hello, 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 people. Hmm? I can't hear nobody.
I should have to press something, man.
Oh. Eh-heh.
Yeah.
So what I did look while, I just show you how to set it out. You start off with a Gantt chart. This is Gantt chart right here. I'm gonna touch on Gantt chart. We're gonna touch on Gantt chart. And if I go to view and go to network diagram, you'll see start come out like this. And if I continue, because this is the duration. Remember, I was telling you that this is what it's gonna look at Microsoft document project. Give it the duration, it give it the timing, right? And down here you can put the resource, the various resource that you want to carry stand, the various resource that you want to make cement. You can get the various resource down here, right? And if I continue like this, go on. Let me see if I can go back to the Gantt chart, all right? And I can say put on something else, like for instance, um with a bunch tree right there, and I can put so the predecessor right here. I can put the predecessor as one right here. And look at this now with the arrow now. Look what's gonna take place now. You see that? You mix cement and kerosene. That will be mixed up because over here, so you'd mix the cement over here, so and kerosene over here, so. So you can go back and you can go back and you can change it up. You understand? You can go back and change it up. So you go back in the Gantt chart and you can change it up. I can mix cement down here and carry sand up here, right? And then you can go back on the chart and you can look at it again, right? So you can carry sand and mix the cement, but it tell you different days, duration, and it does calculate out with everything for you, right? So I'm gonna show you more with this, but you can download this because I might ask you to use Microsoft Project to set up an AON diagram as well, right? So let me just go back to this one right here. So here's it right here. Whoa, I've gone too far. Still gone too far. Right. And this is a Gantt chart down here that this Gantt chart um help to make up the project the AON diagram.
A late start and finish, and so we've completed that last activity.
So we're gonna look at it again. Microsoft project.
On a
Get it?
final note, we'll look at network diagrams and their relationship to Gantt charts and how it appears when using software such as Microsoft Project. At the top we have the network diagram, so order review leading to order vendor parts, produce other standard parts, design some custom parts, software development, designing of custom parts goes into manufacturing some custom hardware, which goes into assembly and then down to testing. So we've got a few different paths through this network diagram. So as we saw before, this network diagram is showing the start and the finish dates, and it's given an ID number and a duration of 2 days. RES means resources, so we could have put resources in here like a team or a person's name or some equipment, whatever resources we thought might be required. Now, when you look at the Gantt chart down the bottom, which is a schedule that shows this bar chart demonstrating relationships between the different tasks, we can see here it gives us some information. So it gives us the ID number of the task or activity. It gives us the duration. So here it's 2 days. The task name, we can see order review. It gives us a start day and the finish day. So that's there, start and finish. But it also shows us the late start and late finish. We can see the slack here, so we know this must be on the critical path. There's 0 slack, and anything with a 0 we know is on the critical path. When you look at the bar chart over here on the Gantt chart, it also shows you how different activities are related together. So it's showing us that after order review is done, there are a number of different activities that all start or can start at the same time. And then as we can see here, this ID number 4, the custom parts, it actually leads to ID number 6, which then goes to assemble. And we can see that little arrow here going from number 4 all the way down to number 6 and then following through. These relationships seem to indicate that when one task finishes, the next task can start, although these 4 are scheduled concurrently to all start at the same time. They may in fact have a start-to-start relationship. So in software in particular, you can schedule in so that different activities have certain relationships. Some things may need to start together or finish together and so forth. In part 3, we'll look at the different types of relationships in a network diagram in more detail. We'll look at opportunities to decrease the critical path and therefore the length of the project. And we'll also look at some tips for estimating how long activities should go for, the activity durations.
All right, so we're gonna look at another one now. Hold on. Go to the boat, man. Go to. Odi. Yes, how much years alone you know go to? Hmm? But some couple years well, man. Hmm? All right. So nice for you, nice for you to join us again. All right. So you understand what's going on, Guthrie? So far?
Kind of, sir, kind of.
Kinda. Okay.
Yes,
With a we had 5 persons on. So what you can do is we are recording this, so you can look it over again, and we have the videos as well, so you can either look straight on the video direct watch the videos directly, or you can watch the recording that I'm trying to explain what is going on in the video. So we're gonna look at part 3 now and see what we have with part 3. All right. So let us look at part 3. So this is part 3. Let me see if I can get it share again.
In this video, we examine types of relationships in a network diagram. We'll look at methods for decreasing the critical path or the overall project duration, and understand the importance of estimating activity durations correctly. The images in this video come from Pearson's textbook, Project Management in Practice. Here we can see different types of relationships. A represents sequence tasks. A is preceded by nothing, B is preceded by A, and C is preceded by B. B represents a burst. Y and Z are preceded by X. Y and Z can begin at the same time if you wish, and X is a burst activity with Y.
All right, let me explain the burst. X goes out to Y and Z, so it's like something is opening, like it bursts open. So the predecessor for both Y and Z is X. So X feed into both Y and Z. While the one that follow below, we're gonna see it's a merger, right? Where everything come together. While JK and something else go to M.
And Z bursting from X. C represents a merge activity. J, K and L can all begin at the same time if you wish, but they need not occur simultaneously. But all J, K and L must be completed before M can begin. So M is a merge activity. J, K and L are merging into M. And D shows parallel relationships. Z is preceded by X and Y, and AA is preceded by X and Y.
Yep.
In project management, sometimes it's also useful to use leads and lags in a project schedule. These add greater flexibility, and there are two instances where they are handy. The first is when activities.
Oh, by the way, Mr. Monroe had explained the waterfall and agile project management style. Hello, did Mr. Monroe explain agile project management and waterfall type of project management?
No, no, I don't
I,
think so.
oh, all right, I can explain that in next class. I'm not gonna have the time today because I need to go into detail in those two type of project management style.
Of long durations delay the start or finish of successor activities, so you might want to break into smaller components to avoid long delays. And number two, to constrain the start and finish of an activity. Let's look at both in more detail. A lag means a delay and directs a successor activity to be delayed. For example, activity C can only start 3 days after activity B has been finished, such as waiting for a painted room to dry before installing a cabinet. And there's the relationship: activity B, paint room, and then there's a lag, waiting for the paint to dry, and then we can complete activity C, install cabinetry. You can establish a finish to start relationship dependency and specify 3 days of lag time. Lag time is entered into project management software as a positive value. Lead means having an overlap and allows acceleration of a successor activity. This means you can start the activity sooner. For example, activity E should start 3 days after activity B has begun, so there's an overlap. Or an activity can start when 50% of its predecessor has been completed. That is, you can specify a finish to start relationship with a lead time of 50% for the successor activity. Lead time is entered into project management software as a negative value. These are examples of finish to start relationships. Up the top in A, activity B cannot start before activity A has finished. For example, you have two activities: activity A, dig foundations, and activity B, pour concrete. Activity B, pour concrete, cannot begin until the activity A, dig foundations, has been completed. That's quite straightforward. For B, there is actually a lag now of 19 days before activity B can begin. And C, there is a lead of 2 days where activity B can overlap with activity A. Here we look at start-to-start relationships. A at the top, activity B cannot start until activity A starts. The dependent activity can begin any time after the activity that it depends on begins. The start-to-start link type does not require that both activities begin simultaneously. For example, if you have two activities, activity A, pour concrete, and activity B, level concrete. Activity B, level concrete, cannot begin until the activity A, pour concrete, begins. And down the bottom for B, activity Q cannot start until 5 days after activity P has begun. We can see that lag there. Finish to finish relationships. At the top A, activity B cannot finish until activity A finishes. The dependent activity must be completed any time after the activity that it depends on is completed. The finish to finish link type does not require that both activities be completed simultaneously. For example, you have two activities: activity A, add wiring, and activity B, inspect electrical. So activity B, inspect electrical, cannot be completed until the activity A, add wiring, is completed. Down the bottom for B, we have a lag of 4 days between prototype and testing in a finish-to-finish relationship. And here it is in a network diagram. We can follow the dotted lines that indicate different lags. For example, there is a start-to-start lag of 3 days between activity A and B. When activity B is completed, there is a finish-to-start delay of 4 days. Between activity D and activity E, we have a start-to-start lag and also a finish-to-finish lag.
What would you call this one right out here? Finish to finish or start to finish or finish to start or start to finish or finish to finish? What would you call it? Hello? What would you call this one right here? This would be a finish to finish. This is a finish to finish. This is a start to start, finish to start, finish to start, start to start.
Activity E and F have a finish-to-finish lag. Here is an example using start-to-start relationships in laying a pipe. So first we dig the trench, and there's a 3-day lag before we can start laying the pipe. And then there's another 3-day lag before we can refill the earth. Here we can use laddering. Activities can begin sooner and not delay work. You can segment the larger activity, giving the appearance of steps on a ladder. Here's our example laying 1 kilometre of pipe below. You don't need to dig the full length of the trench. You dig, lay the pipe and refill in smaller segments. On the image, we've split this into 3 parts. We start by digging the first part of the trench. When that's finished, we can start digging the next third of the trench. Plus, we can lay the pipe in that first third we've already dug. When both of these are done, we can dig the final part of the trench. At the same time, we can lay the pipe for the second part of the trench, and we can refill the first part of the trench, and so forth. So there is a clear overlap, and we can progressively dig some trench, lay pipe and refill without waiting for the whole 1 kilometre of trench to be dug before we start laying the pipe.
Yep.
In project management software, the predecessor column can be used to show relationships, including the type of relationship and lags and leads, and here's an example. This task has a predecessor task called 10. The SS indicates a start-to-start relationship with a 2-day lag being plus 2 days. We know it's a lag because it's a positive number. Here is another type of relationship called a hammock. This is an activity that spans a segment of the project, going across a number of other activities. For example, in organising a work conference, a number of logistical activities need to be completed, such as booking hotels, flights and transport, where checking prices and making the bookings might be completed at any point across a 2-month period, while a series of other tasks are being done. The duration of hammock activities is determined after the network plan is drawn. Here is an example. The hammock activity shown below, G, needs to be done between week 5 and week 13, and it's tied to activities B, D and F. It needs to start when activity B starts, that is the early start, but must end by the time activity F ends, the early finish. The hammock activity may be stopped and started as needed in that time frame, but it must be fully completed by the end of activity F. For example, getting a final contract signed. It can be signed at any time, enabling flexibility to negotiate back and forth throughout the allowable period. But by the time that period is over, the contract must be signed. And there's a note here. The hammock activity follows early start and early finish constraints. In some instances, you'll want to reduce the project's duration, that is, get it done faster. You may need to reduce the time to market, for example, to recoup development costs or to respond to a competitor. You might have incentive contracts to finish early or impose deadlines. For example, the CEO or director might want the project to be completed by a certain date. You might have very high overhead costs and you need to reduce those costs. Or you'll need to transfer resources such as people and equipment to other projects.
Everybody understand that? Is a way if you want to reduce the time for a project, or why would you want to reduce a project duration time? You can give incentive contracts to finish early. You can pay people more money who want to work faster. You can put deadline, stakeholders and other issues, other constraint. You have a very high overhead cost the project is very, very costly. So you want to reduce the amount of money that you're spending on the project. So you want to finish it. So you want to try find a way or to reduce the amount of time that you spend on the project. And you want to also transfer resources to other projects if you have more projects working on. You want to move people or resources to a different site or a different project. You don't want to stay on one project too long. So the sooner you finish a project, all the better. Even if you set up your AON diagram and the project's gonna finish 35 months, if you can finish in 20 months, all the better for you.
There are a few options for reducing that time frame. When resources are not constrained, you might try crashing. That is, adding resources to the project. For example, you might double the size of the team. However, just be aware of the law of diminishing return, which means just because you double the team, it doesn't mean you'll get it done 50% faster. You might also outsource some or all of the project work. So by subcontracting to experts, they can get things done faster and potentially better. And this also will free up your resources to work on critical activities.
This ring a bell right here, so outsource project work, subcontract to experts, free resources to work on free resources to work on critical activities, schedule overtime. Yeah, so this right here, so we use a lot of Chinese to do. We also use a lot of world contracts our projects in Jamaica to the Chinese them.
You might also
They get it done faster, less money.
schedule some overtime, but be careful here of burnout in the project team. When resources are constrained, you could try fast tracking. So you could rearrange the logic of the project network so that critical activities are done in parallel or concurrently rather than sequentially. You might also try reducing the project scope, so doing less, or reducing the project's quality, as in perhaps you do one less round of testing. And finally, here are some factors that can limit how fast a project can be done. First is the logical order. What order do activities need to be completed in? There may or may not be flexibility there. 2 is the activity duration. So you need to accurately estimate how long activities will take. And if your estimations are poor, this could affect the length of your project. The 3rd is resource availability, the people and equipment. So for example, you might have 6 buildings to paint and they're all available at the same time, but the painters aren't. The 4th is imposed dates. For example, the project may not be able to start until the new financial year due to budget planning. And the 5th is cash flow. Money needs to be approved and made available. If there are constraints with cash flow, this can also impact how quickly your project can be completed. And this closes out our 3-part series on network diagrams and the critical path. In part 1, we learnt what a network diagram is.
All right, we're gonna stop it right here. All right, so Steve, we're gonna send a recording